Yeah, I think inspiration so much is going to come from where I am, who I'm with, what am I reading, what am I doing. It doesn't always happen right away. So being here with the people I'm here with will eventually bubble up into something I write, but it may not be this month. It may be, down the road. Is Transformer, and it has Fred Tomaselli's painting on the cover, which I really love. And so I was so excited he let me use it. So he's an artist who is from California, but I think lives in New York, and his gallery's in New York, and he was really generous about letting me use that image. And then this is I Will Not Kick My Friends, and it has trying to look at the little picture in my corner to see if it's aligned. It's a Gary Winogrand photo that I think is hilarious. I'm not sure if other people share my sense of humor, but I just think that's one of the funniest of his images. And the woman looks like she's about to bite the guy's neck. So if you see Cat's Tongue, the editor that I worked with, who's the assistant director at the press, his name is PJ Carlisle, and he also designed the book. And I usually don't like a really super literal cover on my books, but for Cat's Tongue, I did sort of want a literal cover. And so he found this image of it. It's almost grotesque. It's so like graphic, of this gigantic cat's head with its mouth open and the teeth and the tongue and everything. And it kind of rhymes a little bit with the Winogrand photo. We both thought so. So I really appreciate him, finding that for me. But Cat's Tongue is, it's a book of poems mostly that have something to do with my childhood or youth, because it's a Texas-oriented book, and it's on a Texas press. Texas Review Press is publishing it. But it's a lot of lyric poems, and some of them, I guess you could say, are a critical viewpoint. Thanks for asking about that poem. I published that poem as a flash fiction, and that's how 5 Points, saw it, and that's how I presented it to them. But I think of it as more like a poem, or I guess it's really hybrid to me in my mind. And so I wanted to include it in the book. I really love that piece. So I wanted to name the chapbook after it, because it's probably my favorite thing in that chapbook. The idea of the cat's tongue being dangerous, I think, was something that I've always sort of thought about with cats' bites, because how the bite of a cat is supposed to be, potentially more dangerous than even the bite of a dog because of bacteria, etc. And so that kind of stuck on my mind. My nickname is Cat. That's how a lot of my friends call me Cat instead of Kathleen. And so I enjoyed kind of writing that poem too, because of the personal nature of it. And it's kind of a revenge poem. Yeah. And so weaponizing the tongue of the cat, or the bite of the cat, was definitely something I enjoyed doing. Yeah. So I really like to try to make it different from description. So because I think it can be really sort of stultifying if it's just descriptive. So that's what I try to do, is have it infused with something else, some other idea or purpose or inspiration that's mixing in with the phrases. So yeah, I mean, I think I think I Will Not Kick My Friends might have more ekphrastic work than Transformer does. Transformer has, I'd say, probably a little bit more work about gender and, you know, focus on domestic violence and those kind of things. A couple of at least one of the sections is pretty focused on that stuff. So yeah, definitely. I mean, there's still some McPhrases in here, but like I Will Not Kick My Friends, I'm kind of remembering as being more ekphrastic. But yet, you know, like I don't want it to be, oh, you know what I'm thinking of is when I was in graduate school, I was paired up with a photographer and I was asked, you know, to write poems about her photographs. And I tried doing that. And she was just really, really infuriated by my poems. And it was so bizarre. I didn't know her at all. She wasn't anyone I knew. She was in graduate school at the same university in the fine art department. And I think she thought my poems were too descriptive of her work. And I think since then, I've just been really, really worried about being, you know, too descriptive and try to avoid that at all costs. So it was an interesting experience. Didn't work out too well. I like Concision a lot. And so I think that when I write and then when I edit, I usually am trying to move in that direction and pare down and concentrate. And if it's a poem about something that's dramatic, you know, like in a dramatic event, I tend to write a shorter poem and try to have it be, I guess, more concentrated, you know, lyrically. And so, yeah, I mean, I think maybe I just have a tendency toward a more concise and concentrated style. And so it's always a little bit surprising to me when I write a longer poem. If I write a 2 or 3 page poem, it's always really a sort of a shock to the system. So, but yeah, that poem, do you want me to read it? I could try reading it since it's so short. It's just really a moment, you know. It takes place in such a quick instant. South Huntington Apartments. And you were breathless in the laundry room, hiding behind a kitchen door ajar, listening for him to take the cellar stairs. Is it possible he was frightened he might kill you? You could see his shoes through the strip between hinges, high tops that looked innocent even when he kicked you. Rounded rubber at the toes is stiff, can bruise a shin, thigh. Hell, what's not soft enough to blacken when you're 24? Your ears, eyes are accurate, are sharp and clear. You stare at green laces wrapped over his ankles. Horses drown in the molasses time that floods a shadow-tinted room until his fear spins him around and up the cement stairs, a chemical wind rising to find some spark to light it. 3 flights up, he sprints, but you just need to gain 1 floor to leave. You just need 1 story, and it isn't his. So that poem was written not too long before the book came out in 2018. No, 2020, but it probably was written around 2018 or so, I'm thinking. But it was based on an experience I had a long time ago, you know, when I was 24. And I wanted to write about domestic violence, you know, but I wanted it to be I don't really like poems with a lot of I this, I that, you know. So if I'm going to write about something that I actually experienced, a lot of times I will write about it in the second person or even the third person. And especially if it's something like that's really emotional, you know, and intense. So I didn't want to say I. And yeah, it was something I really vividly remembered. You know, it really, it was, you know, something that was unforgettable. And even down to the details of like looking through the hinges of like the space in the door, you know, where the door, it's just this little space, right? And yeah, so I've written, you know, written poems about like being for a short time, just for a year or two in a relationship that was quite violent and dangerous. But you know, it took a long time to get to where I could write about that experience, I think, in a way that was interest to me, you know, and not overly emotional or not just too angsty, you know, because I think those kind of poems are really too personal. I don't know. They just don't interest me if they're too emotional. Yeah, I'd love to read a poem that I wrote at the Merrill House. It's a poem that you know, I really I like this poem a lot. You know, you don't like all your poems equally, right? And there's some poems that, you know, all right, and then I'm kind of over it by the time I've written the poem. And but this poem I really do like, and I think it's probably because I wrote it at the Merrill House and it encapsulates that experience for me, you know. And one of the aspects of the poem came from something that Lynn Callahan told me, probably more than one, like a couple or three things in this poem probably are from conversations with her and Jeff about, you know, the area and, you know, the history. And there was I was there, you know, from December 15th to January 15th, I believe. So it was super cold. And there's things that are really unique to that part of the country that I don't experience out in Sonoma. So, you know, the idea that like the whole bay can freeze was just mind blowing to me, you know, like the way it looked was so magical. So, you know, things like that I never experience in my regular life, which is, I think, part of the joy of a residency is that it can just sort of pluck you out of your ordinary quotidian experience and put you somewhere where you can just see and learn and experience things you wouldn't ordinarily come across at all, you know. So this is Queen Isabel on Watch Hill. This is from Transformer. Impeccable waiters waver in corners as the Ocean House carousel cocktail stills me. I'll try to coax the rocking horse out of my ear. All hilltop curbs signed private. I parked 4 blocks down in an emptied town. Now bankers own the old Portuguese fishermen's houses, their wide chestnut planks and Persian rugs seen only on weekends. I didn't know a bay could freeze in waves, ruffled in place where the sea's shallows are a pewter plate. In a dining room at the inn, 3 walls of casements fill up with the sound. How many bright panes. Fallen into the ranks of those alone, a glittering host meets my gaze over empty tables. My love of loves is less than a ghost, speaks to me not from the next room or in dream. Holy memory, give me a crust, rich soup of his voice or light of his face on the glass, and I'll sell all my jewels to feed us, poor believers.